I'm living for purpose above all else. There's a moment where you realize maybe I'm not these thoughts, maybe I'm not these ideas. And so when you slip out of that mind and body space, you can liberate so much suffering that you've had. You're like, wow, I'm not suffering anymore for this moment, for this 5 seconds. What is this? Is this God? Is this the soul? When you start to heal more, then it starts to get easier to come back to that space. You start to sense who you are and why you're here. I start to hear my soul's voice. And so the purpose it starts to become clearer. And that's a difficult part of the journey because it takes time to actually be yourself, to actually hold your own frequency amongst other people. Everything starts to flow, opportunities start to come. And now it's like your soul's embodied in the world.
How did you end up in this space?
Really difficult life situations got me to learn and remember all of this.
Welcome back to the Humankinder podcast. Every so often you meet someone who is so dedicated to the spiritual path that they're literally willing to do anything it takes to understand themselves and the nature of this reality. Myles Treanor is one of those rare people. At 19, he was diagnosed with incurable health conditions. And on the day that he was going to take his own life because he couldn't handle it anymore, he had his first mystical spiritual awakening. That has been the catalyst for him to develop a modern spiritual method for awakening and healing, which he calls the soul alignment method. This was such a rich conversation that I had to split it into part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is the first half an hour of the session where we really get an overview of Myles' experience and how he sees the world and an overview of the soul alignment method. In part 2 then, we go deep into the experiences that brought Myles to this journey, how he developed the method, and we go into each phase in depth. Myles also brings us on a meditative journey near the end of this recording to experience what he calls the alignment state, a state where we can recognize our true nature as the light that creates the universe. This is a really personal one for me because I've been working with Myles for the last 12 months, and I can honestly say that I'm a completely different person. Years of seeking have led me to meeting Myles, and the work I've done with him has accelerated my own journey tenfold. So let's dive in to this incredible conversation.
I'd like to start by reading something that you've written, and it brings us into a place then where you can react to that and respond to that and start to unpack that. And it starts like this: choose the light above all else. There comes a moment when a soul remembers that nothing in this human world, no relationship, no career, no health condition, holds more weight than alignment with the light. Not because those things don't matter, but because without alignment, they are empty, meaningless, and rootless. I have chosen to align with the light above all else, above the comfort of attachment, above the noise of fear, above the seduction of worldly success. And I believe this is the highest choice any human can make. When you choose alignment, true alignment with your soul, with the light, you are choosing peace. You are choosing acceptance. You are choosing harmony with life as it is. These are not fleeting feelings. They are natural consequences of choosing what is real. From this place, relationships align, health aligns, purpose becomes embodied, not because you chased it, but because you remembered who you are. This is the invitation I offer to every soul ready to return home. Choose alignment above all else. I'd love to hear you share more about what is it that you're pointing to here.
Choose the straight path. It's like choose to return to who you are. Choose the light. It's like it's like the center point of who you are. Like focus on that, and all else will just align from there. Is like you can choose relationships as your highest. You could choose career as your highest. You could choose lifestyle as your highest. Or you could choose the light as your highest. And it's very different. It's like, for me, choosing alignment is choosing God, you could say. Choosing my soul. I choose to focus on what my soul wants above all else. Whatever the consequences, as long as I have alignment. Because when I have alignment, I'm satisfied with everything. But if I don't have alignment, then what do I have? I feel that's the essence of that. It's some people choose alignment above all else, and everything in their life changes. While there's some people who are still like going, oh, money, money's my motivation, or romantic relationship is my motivation. Those are two common motivations for a lot of people, like in terms of that's subconsciously what they're living for. But for me, I'm living for purpose above all else.
Yeah. It's strong and clear. And if I'm someone who's sitting here thinking, well, career's important, money's important, these things are important. This alignment thing sounds woolly to me. I don't really understand what you're talking about. Can you unpack what you mean when you say alignment?
Well, alignment is a state of consciousness that you enter. It's like I can observe now my thoughts. I can observe now my sensations. And so I'm that observer. I'm the witness of this experience. And as I'm returning to that witness, as I'm returning to that awareness, I'm realigning with who I am. And as I notice I'm in this space of awareness, I'm starting to notice that I'm not so limited anymore. And then as I'm here, I notice that there's a sense of a light here. It's like a source point. And so I'd have to guide you into there to really experience that. But when I'm returning to this space of awareness, it's like the soul space. It's like who I really am. And when I'm here, it's like a freedom. It's like silence. And that's like the alignment space. And for me, when I focus on that point, if I focus my attention on the source of who I am on a moment to moment basis, then everything just seems to slow down and make sense. So, to be very specific, I would say that when my attention goes to the space above my head and I imagine going up further into that space, I can notice a sense of a light. And when I go up into that light, it's like I go further and further up into that light. It's like I'm returning to that 0 point, that 0 point of awareness, which I see as the light. And many, many people across many religions, across many spiritual methods have realized that point, and they also articulate it as light. So that some people call it the Christ light, the Christ path, or you would have in indigenous cultures in the Amazon, they call it Shani, which is the light, the source of all things. Then in Judaism and in Islam, the translation of God is the light. And so all these different traditions, the light is really determined as the source of all things. So this soul alignment state is really a state in which you return to who you really are, which is the light.
Beautiful. Because I've had this experience with you of a lot of the different meditation practices that I had practiced over years and years all seem to point towards this same place. So I did a lot of meditation with Sam Harris's Waking Up app, and he would talk about how he uses this non-dual approach, this approach of turning awareness back on itself to try and find this sense of I. And turning back on oneself, you realize that there is no I, and you're left with this kind of spacious awareness. Right? Or people like Muji who would point to this continuously. And the central teaching was that you are bigger than your thoughts, you are bigger than your sensations, you're essentially the space in which all of this is happening. You're the space in which all of this is appearing. And when I met you and started to work with you, you added this element that in this space, there is a light of almost like a light of knowing, a light of information, a light of guidance that is in this. It's like this space is not just this empty void like space, but actually it's connected to this sense of purpose and expansion, and that this is truly who you are, more so than any thought or any smaller sense of I. And that, for me, created a lot of clarity because I'd become very confused by lots of different disparate teachings which didn't seem to connect those things. And I spent a long time doing meditation. But what I loved about your approach was that was part of a bigger method. In fact, that first piece of just coming into that spacious awareness is actually just step one, almost, of just recognizing that. And so I'd be curious to see where you see that practice sitting inside of that larger framework, and what is that whole thing like for you?
To simplify is when you experience who you are, there's a sense of, oh, I want to stay here. So it's like when you realize your true nature through an experience, you can start to realize, wow, I don't want to leave this place. I don't really want to return back to the ego and the body and be so stuck there anymore. Because when I'm in this space of awareness, I'm far greater than those aspects. I'm actually something that's very unlimited. I'm something that's way beyond what this human can understand. And it's like, wow, it feels so light. And so it's like, I don't want to leave this place. And then what you'll notice is at some point you might slip out of that place. You might go into the Maya again. You might a little bit get stuck again. And then you're like, no, I want to return there. And so you naturally start to seek to return. You start to seek a return back to who you are. And so the method actually starts there. It's like the first step is having an experience of who you are. It's returning to who you are, realizing the self. It starts there. And so through an experience, you'll realize the space of who you are. And then you'll enjoy that and have everyone has a different experience. But eventually, each person slips out of that state. And now you start to enter what's called the realization that, oh, I have things that pull me out. And what are these called? And these are called your attachments. These are the things that are blocking you from staying in that center. And these attachments are like lessons to learn. They're pulling you out because you're here to learn different things. It's like your karma. And so it's ideal to sit here all day long in the human experience, but that's not how the human experience is. The human experience is that we're first born and we play out this identity, and we're not aware of who we are. And then all of a sudden there's a moment where you realize, well, maybe I'm not these thoughts. Maybe I'm not these ideas. And there's a moment where you can have an experience of something greater than just what your mind thinks. And all of a sudden that can shift someone's life. That can happen on a small level, or it can happen on a large level, where people can realize they go beyond this mind, and then they start to question, what is that? What am I then? Who am I? And that's really the beginning of the journey. It's when you slip out of the matrix for a moment and you realize, wait a second, what's going on here? Am I really this? Am I really this thought? Am I really bound to thoughts? Because I thought I thought all it was thought. And then it's like now the fascination begins. Now the journey begins. And so when you slip out of that mind and body space, it's like, it can be liberating. It can liberate so much suffering that you've had. You're like, wow, it's like, I'm not suffering anymore. For this moment, for this 5 seconds, I'm not suffering. I was like, wow, God, what is this? Is this God? Is this the soul? What is going on? And so it's a universal experience that all people who've awakened have had, but they use different language and linguistics to try to describe their experience. But on a bigger level, they're having the same experience. So when in that space, it's like, yes, it's like all things are possible. It's just, you're just so not limited. But when you slip out of it then, and then you realize you keep slipping out of it and you keep coming back and keep coming back down, you're like, you get frustrated. And so you'll notice the hardest experience of being a human is like the experience of pain, suffering. It's like these things that pull us out. And so the natural second phase is you have an urge to get rid of your pain. You have a natural urge to get rid of your suffering. And so healing is the second phase of the journey, because you'll unconsciously want to just get rid of what no longer serves you. You want to get rid of the illusions. You just a natural drive is like, I just want to get rid of all these thoughts that I used to believe, these ideas, this pain, these emotions. I just want to get rid of them. And so like pain is really the driver in this phase. And so we're drawn to therapies or different types of drugs or experiences. We're trying to get rid of the pain. And so people go on different paths. They go through yoga, they go through breath work, they go through meditations, or they go through plant medicines, or they go reading spiritual books, whatever it is. They're all trying to decrease the pain, to get rid of the suffering. So healing is a natural second phase, because when you start to heal more, when you start to let go more of what is pulling you down, then it starts to get easier to come back to that space. It starts to get easier to be present. It starts to get easier to realign with who you are. And you start to feel lighter. It's easier and easier to feel lighter. But then when you're starting to feel lighter and you're making a lot more space, all of a sudden you start to realize what you actually love to do. You start to actually have a sense of, I actually really love this. I actually really resonate with this. And that stuff that I used to believe, it's kind of gone now. And so as you're letting go of this pain, you're starting to hear your soul's voice. You're starting to sense what your soul loves to do. It's almost like your soul identity starts to come online. You start to sense who you are and why you're here. And so that's what happens around this phase. So this is phase 3. It's like you realize why you're here. And so that's the phase of the purpose. Start to go, yeah, there's things that I do that actually really light me up. There's things that I do that actually I really enjoy, and it gives me a lot of meaning. And it gives me a lot of life force and it's passion. And I feel like, wow, I didn't realize how significant those things were. But now that I've kind of cleared a little bit the clutter, it's like I can really see that this is my true voice, not just my conditioned voice anymore. This is my true identity, not just my conditioned identity. I start to hear my soul's voice. And so the purpose it starts to become clearer. And then when you have your purpose become clearer and clearer, now there's a moment where you start to focus on those things more. And when you start to focus on those things more, you start to act on it more. And now it starts to become more physical. Your soul identity starts to become, it's almost like it seeps down into your body more. It starts to become more embodied. And you start to actually experience it more in the physical. And then there's that urge to go deeper, more. I want to experience it more. And so you come into a moment where you realize that I'm experiencing inside myself the realization of what I love to do, but how do I want to get it out more. I want to get this more into the world. How do I do this? And then you realize that there's a thing called communication. And communication's a big factor because you can realize something in yourself, but if you can't communicate it into the physical, then it'll never become physical. So to be able to communicate it, there's a whole process. And so you can have people around you. This is where the aspect of other people come in. People around you are like, no, you're the old self. You are this conditioned self. This is who you're supposed to be. And you're like, no, but I'm actually something else. I'm something different. I actually don't like what you're telling me. And then you have this conflict usually where it's like your true identity, you've experienced it, but you're maybe finding it difficult to actually communicate it to other people. And so natural phase here is you just have to learn now to put boundaries on what you're not. You learn to put boundaries on what you're not, and you're trying to keep your attention focused on this true identity. So this whole process of conscious relating comes in, where I'm learning now to actually really hold this purpose and not lose the focus on it throughout the day, and try to keep my attention on it, keep my thoughts on it, keep my actions on it, keep my focus on it so I can physicalize it. And the biggest influence on our state outside of ourselves is other people. And so other people bring information into us. And when we're not able to hold our own purpose inside ourselves, then people can influence us into other things, to focus on other things that are not relevant to our path. And that's a difficult part of the journey because it takes time to actually be yourself. It takes time to actually hold your own frequency amongst other people. So this phase of being able to consciously relate is a journey. And it's a real learning at this phase. But when you start to learn then how to communicate your truth, and you start to learn how to communicate what you love to do, now it starts to seep into the world, your identity, and then people start to mirror it back to you. And then when you're able to get to that phase, then now it's almost like the world starts to give you opportunities to share your gifts, share your passions to the world. And now you start to consciously commune. You start to actually bring your gifts around the world. It just starts to click. Everything starts to flow. Opportunities start to come. And now it's like you're almost like your soul's embodied in the world. And so your reality is starting to mirror externally what you've realized internally. And so it's like phase 1 is like you're going here, and then phase 2, phase 3, you're physicalizing your soul in the human experience. And then it's like you're so in it that you're living it now. You're not just thinking about it, you're not just feeling it, you're actually living your purpose. And so in a way it's a descension journey. You're here to remember who you are, realize it, and then when you're in that space, you then this is why I'm here. Oh yeah. And then you start to take action on it, and then you start to live it. So for me, it is quite chronological. And the last thing I'll say about this is that Christ's path, let's say, different examples of spiritual leaders, but Jesus is an example of this, where Jesus was able to bring the light down into the body and then just live it in the physical. Like he wasn't telling people to go beyond this and go to the light. He was telling people this, but also it was like bring the light into the world. It's like this is quite misunderstood, is that people tend to say, "Oh, let's go out of this experience." Yeah, but that's step one. Because you have to go return to it and realign. But when you're there, now bring it down. It's not just about going out. So yeah.
So much to unpack there, and I'll start with a summary of that, because what I heard you say is that there's these 5 phases, right? And what a journey I'd imagine you have been on to uncover these 5 phases. But phase 1 is really starting to reconnect and understand your true nature as the awareness that is greater than just this human experience, and starting to go up, 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 and what many mystics have called it, get into union with God, that awareness that is pervading absolutely everything. And once you have your sense of yourself as that bigger piece, you start to realize that in order to stay connected to that state and stay aware of your true nature, there are certain wounds and traumas and conditioning that is pulling you out, right? And so you find that you get that experience of alignment, of resting in spacious awareness, and the next thing you go down to the kitchen and your mother says something and it just triggers you, or your partner says something and it triggers you, and suddenly you're being pulled back into those things. And then going through a process then of phase 2 of starting to unlearn that. Then phase 3, as you start to get into this relationship with your higher self and also start unlearning your traumas, you notice that there are certain things that really light you up in the world, that intuitively feel right for you, and they're different from what other people what lights other people up. And so you might have, when you're growing up, have been forced to play guitar and you just hated it, right? But then one day you go out and you start dancing and you realize, wow, I really love dancing, but I hated guitar. And then there are relationships that start to, you realize that I really resonate with these type of people and not the people who are used to maybe resonate with. And so you start to get in touch with this intuitive sense of knowing. And what you're calling that is sort of your soul's purpose. There's certain things that align and there's certain things that don't. And then as you start to embody that more and more, this 4th phase of conscious relating is where you start to try and embody that in life. And then there are relationships around you that either make it really difficult to do that or make it easier. And you start to embody that in the physical. Things will have to change. How you relate to people will have to change. And seeing that the way that people interact with you is a mirror back to you of what you need to now let go of. And then phase 5 is stepping further into that and starting to, as that higher self who's more embodied, start to now consciously create community and go into community and bring the gifts that you've learned through uncovering things that have been traumatic for you or learning what really resonates with you, sort of bring that gift out to the world and start to embody that more in community. Would that be a fair summary of 5 stages? I know there's lots in it.
Yes, that's a beautiful summary, Cian.
And so I'm going to dive into more of each one of those, right? But before we dive into that method, how did you end up in this space uncovering these? What sort of experiences led you to be sitting here today talking about these 5 phases?
Really difficult life situations got me to learn and remember all of this.
If you're intrigued about what's happening in part 2, Here's a little taste of what you can expect.
Just real clear voice came. It was like, this is why you're here. And just shiver, boom. And everything's just clicked just by that one statement. It was like, everyone's going to think this is a miracle. But you know exactly how this works. And you're going to explain it. I'm not here. I didn't incarnate this time to talk about theory. There's an actual framework. There's a specific way to do this. You can have your purpose broken down in detail. You can live your purpose in absolute nuanced fashion. You can embody it to the max, to the core. What level do you want to go? It can be 10 times bigger than that. It can be 10 times deeper than that. Your mind is so diluting what it actually is. I felt like I was leaving my body. I felt like, this is it. This is over now. I'm either going to die or I'm going to find out who I am. And then all of a sudden, I just like see my body 3 meters above, like 4 meters above. And then all of a sudden...
Come join us in part 2 if you want to hear more. But if you'd like to reach out to Myles at this stage, he has an email address. Also, you can reach him via his website. And he has an Audius platform, which is an app where you can taste and test some of his meditations. You can also follow him on Instagram, and all of that is in the description below this episode.